Nun. What is this? Taf Nun Vav on the top. Yesterday we just 2 points about yesterday. We didn't say the psak yesterday, so the people did mention that that what's considered hara means the beginning of a bia, the beginning of the penetration. So the focus of the Gemara and the halacha is that neshika is not, like the Gemara says on the top. That's ein ela neshika patur alei. That's why we paskin, and achnasas haTorah, that's considered hara. That's considered hara. And one more point, I made a mistake yesterday. I noticed I started talking on the third line, fourth line, Isha Labala Minayin. That Gemara said that also as far as a husband to his wife, that hara is considered a bia. I thought it was talking about chuppah, and I got stuck a little bit as I was talking. Rashi says it's talking about kedusha bia. Here's Rashi, Linya Mekadesh bia, that also he's calling his wife if he made the kedusha. Nowadays, you don't. If the Gemara says not to Mekadesh bia, the Gemara says Rav Mangid. We're not supposed to, but that wouldn't be kona, even the hara. But it's not talking about chuppah. What I said yesterday doesn't seem to be true. And people were asking that the chuppah alone, without having any bia, also is already in the surah maybe. So I don't know those dinim, but the Rashi says that Isha Labala was talking about Mekadesh bia. And again, the halacha is that hara means achnasas haTorah, not the shika. The shika alone wouldn't be even considered the beginning of a bia. And the mela, whatever the Gemara says, as far as chayvei krisos, chayvei lavin, everything, yibum, everything is only with achnasas haTorah. So on to a new sugi on top of Nun Vav, and it's in the Mishnah. Now there's a question here in the address that we're given. So the Mishnah said that hara is enough to be kona a yevama, but the word kana is not only going on that. The word kana is going the whole Mishnah. The Mishnah in the beginning said, the beginning of the parak, abali vimto beim shogig beim ones nezid. So and also hara is kana. So the word kana is going the whole thing. And Tosis brings down that it could be that the issue of our Gemara, the whole sugya today, the whole amud, is not the issue about hara as much as the bia shogig. So we'll learn like that. There's a Tosis brings down that there's a Yerushalmi that talks about it, but just to keep simple, the Gemara is going to talk about bia shogeg. Means the Mishnah says that not only a regular bia that's done intentionally, he knows what he's doing, but even if it would have been a shogeg, a onus, amazing. Well, they must talk about what onus means. That, but the issue that the Gemara is going on is that it's called not such a not such a good bia. It's called a bia psula. That it wasn't done with the full intention, or maybe it's also going on in the case of hara also. The whole thing we're going to talk about, the whole Amma, just a preview of what we're going to talk about, is the issue that a Kohen's wife is allowed to eat truma from the time that he has Nisuin. From the time that he has there's Eris and then Nisuin, and the Kohen who now marries a Bas Yisrael, she's also allowed to eat the truma. Yesterday's parsha just pointed out that it didn't say that. It just spoke about if she was a Bas Kohen and she married Yisrael, then she cannot eat truma. That was the issue that the parsha talks about. Then you have to expect that it should say the opposite also. It doesn't say. But it doesn't say so in the pasuk.
She's a Bas Kohen
and she marries Yisrael, then she cannot eat truma.
Oh, even from the...
When she marries Yisrael, she cannot eat truma. If her husband dies, then she could go back home, unless she has a son. That's yesterday's parsha.
Yeah.
But just to point out that pasuk doesn't say that if a Kohen marries a Bas Yisrael, that she could eat truma. Doesn't say in the pasuk. We learn that from Miknas Kaspo. Maybe Midrash she's allowed to eat medicine, but the Gemara is going to go just to take it simple that Arusa, when a Kohen marries a woman, a Kedushin, she may not yet eat truma. Only after Nisuin may she eat truma. That's the Hakdama Ta'asugya. And we're going to talk about this Bia Psula. This call it a Bia Psula. It's not a Bia Psula. Call it Bia Grua. That he didn't have consciousness. He was B'sho. He didn't know what he's doing. Shogeg. He's marrying her, but it's not with the consciousness of the Bia that they had for the Kedusha Bia. So it's or the Nisuin, I'm sorry. We're talking about the Nisuin. We'll get into the issue of Yevama, but that's going to be the general subject of what we're talking about today. So some take out the words Echad Amar, Echad Agomer, that we're not going on Hara Dafka, it's not the subject. We're talking about the rest of the Mishnah talks about Shogeg, Mezid, onus, that it wasn't done with the regular Kavanah. A little bigger. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. My Kana. So it says in the Mishnah that even though it wasn't the regular bia, there was some deficiency in the bia, still it's kona. And the kona meant that the yibum is a good yibum. But the one wants to know if it also is going to be kona lagabi other things also. the Kohen, this person who died was a Kohen, his brother was a Kohen, he had no children, the wife, the husband, the Yavam now was going to take her, and he had relations with her only without knowing, without realizing that it's Yibum, Shogeg, Ones, Mezid, maybe also Hara. Is that enough that she should be able to eat Truma? That's going to be the subject of today. The Yavam who had relations with the Yavama, but it wasn't a great bia, the fact that it was not with the right intention, or that it wasn't a complete penetration, it was only the beginning, is that enough that she should be able to eat Truma? He's a Kohen, the brother was a Kohen, and now he's a Kohen, and she wants to continue eating, she wants to eat Truma. Her husband's a Kohen. But the bia that they had yet was not a real bia. The fact that it was not the das, or that it was not a complete penetration. So Rav says that this bia is enough for everything. The fact that the Mishnah says that it's a good bia, it's a good bia for everything, and she'd be able to eat Truma. It's only for what it's talking about, the drasha we learned over there, that even if it was not a good, great bia, it's good enough. That's only what it's talking about. That now the Yavam, once he had this bia with his wife, with the Yavama, he's going to yashin his brother. And also, like not like the other brothers, the Yavam is one who gets the Yerusha. That's enough to make him that he's Kohen. He did Yibam. And also the Potrim in Yibam, that she now had Yibam. But not as far as eating Truma. We'll get more details as we go along.
What was the end of the sentence?
I'm sorry?
What was the end of the sentence? El Devarim
Amurim b'Parasha, which are Levish b'Nechsei Achiv, and the Potrim in Yibam. Period. But it doesn't apply to other things, other kinyanim, which would mean that she's allowed to eat Truma if he's a Kohen. The Gemara is going to explain a little bit more. It's a little bit vague so far, but the Gemara is going to explain. So there's going to be two ikadamis over here, two lashonos. The first one, if the first brother who died, if she had already had nesuin with him, we know that the din of Yibum was even if the first marriage was only Erison. Also, if the Erison and they had no children and he died, so also there's a din of Yibum. So if the first marriage was even a suin, it was a consummated marriage, and then and she was allowed to eat truma at that time. She was married to a Kohen. She was allowed to eat truma, and then he died. She's not allowed to eat truma. And now the Yavam had this bia grua. He had the bia with her, but it wasn't a full-fledged bia. The fact that it was not with das, then everybody would agree that that bia is enough to make that she could eat truma. The brother's also a Kohen now, right? That if there was married, a full marriage to the first brother, and then he died, she could not eat truma. But then they had she had a bia with the Yavam, even though it was not the greatest bia. Also, it's enough to eat truma. The ha'evas kachla meikar, she already was eating. By her husband, she ate. Kipligim in Erison. If the first marriage was only Erison, the first husband who died, she only had Erison, and then he died out of the Erison, and she never was able to eat yet truma. She wasn't able to eat truma by the husband only Erison. And now she came to the Yavam, and they had some kind of a bia. Is that bia grua enough that she should be able to eat truma? Rav says that it's good enough. After we had the Reba, whatever the drasha we had to learn out yesterday, that or was it yesterday or 2 days ago, that a bia shogeg is enough. Even if it was not without kavana, it's enough that it should be considered a yibum. So it's good for that also. It's good for that she's allowed to eat truma. It's considered a full wife, and she's allowed to eat truma. We just says that the Yavam is as good as the husband, but not even not stronger than the husband, means that this Biapsula makes that he's in place of, but the first husband not only Erison. If he married, when the second one has a complete bia, when he's going to marry her with a bia, and it's going to then be regular wife, she'll be able to eat truma. It's only a bia grua, the fact that it was without das, or that it was not a full penetration, that wouldn't be enough to give her truma, since she didn't have truma by the first husband.
You remind me that we say when the woman has the wisdom with her one husband and he dies, that's enough for it. Then you even does.
There's a chiv even on that also. There's a chiv even from it's also right. There's also down the page, halfway down the page, the Ikadamri. But so far, we're just going in the first lashon. Everybody agrees that if there was nesuin to the first husband, then the bia grua would be enough to give her truma to the yavam. But the machlokes is if the only was Eris and she was not able to eat truma by the first husband, is the bia grua enough to make her let her eat truma from the brother, from the yavam?
And we're saying it's a
Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. The Eris in the case of Rav says she may because it's good enough. Bia shogig is enough. Shmuel says no. It's not only to make her equal to the first husband, not more than the first husband. La'alume is to strengthen. Today they call it alimut. If you listen to the news, it's alimut. Alimut is the strong. It's really an Aramaic word. It's not Hebrew, but they use it now in the Hebrew also. And we see Shmuel is consistent with what he says someplace else. Whatever the husband would have given truma, so then the yavam also gives truma. If the husband was not able to give truma, the yavam doesn't give truma. Rashi says we know that we are assuming that this statement was talking about a bia grua. It's talking about this deficient kind of a bia without das, or not a full penetration. And if the husband would have gave, if the husband already was feeding her truma, so then the yavam can continue. But if the husband did not yet, then the yavam cannot. Like we just said, that by Nisu and everybody agrees that bia is enough to give her truma. It's everything that Shmuel holds. Meisvei, Akasha, we'll see what Akasha is on. Bas Yisrael pikacha shenesasa lekoin pikeach. Below his pik lekon sa'achin escharesh. Pikeach means that a person who's smart. Opposite is a cheresh who's considered not a bardas. A cheresh that he cannot hear and he cannot talk. That he's not considered a bardas. So there was a marriage that went on, and first everyone was fine. The woman, the kala, the chassan, everybody was a pikeach. They had erison. But then, before they did nisuin, the husband became a cheresh.
The husband, yeah.
He's not able to do kiddushin. He wouldn't be able to do kiddushin, right? The person that's only going to be kiddushin rabbanan,
She's
really.
stuck in Erusin.
So she's a married woman, and
She's
Agav,
in
there's no.
Erusin, but then what happened? Then he
became a cheresh. Agav, he can't get anything. You have to get from him, and she can stay married to him. She should take good care of him. He's a cheresh and needs help. They're married. But the question is,
can she truma?
Can she eat truma? So the erison alone was not enough to make her to eat truma. And now they had the bia, which Rashi says that this being married to a cheresh is also called without das. The same way we said in our Mishnah, a very interesting comparison. The same way we said in our Mishnah that shogeg and onus and amazed there wasn't a full bia because it wasn't with the full das. So a cheresh, even if he has das, his das is not das. So all the bias that he's going to have is only going to be like a bia grua. So they have relations, but the relations is only considered a low grade relation. It's not considered with das. Because of his state of cheresh, that he's a cheresh, he's a cheresh. He's considered without. So it's the same level as the Mishnah that spoke about without das, because it was b'shogeg, b'onus. So Eino chelas, she can't eat truma. He's a kohen. He can eat truma. The marriage didn't have a marriage. They're married, and she cannot eat truma. How about now they die and she falls to the brother? The brother's also a cheresh. You don't have to get a turkey personally because it's a case. It's a case. It didn't actually happen.
Like he could have had a stroke or something. So it would make him a cheresh.
Whatever that makes him a cheresh. If he can't hear and he can't talk. Meis v'nafla lefnei yavam cheresh. So now the husband died, but the brother is also a yavam cheresh. Now she could eat truma. Wow, the miracle! She wasn't able to eat truma by the first husband, and he was a cheresh, and by the yavam we could. In this way, the yavam is even stronger than the husband. So Rav says, so Rav is smiling. What? It's against Shmuel. It's against Shmuel. It's like Rav. Rav says that if there was a matzav of Essen, that she was not able to eat truma, and then there was a bia grua, Rav says that's enough. The case we had before was a bia grua, was a whatever it was, bia shogeg, whatever the case was. Here we're having another application of a bia grua, that it was the bia of a cheresh. And Rav says that even though she was an arusa, she wasn't able to eat by her first husband, but now that she fell to yavam, once there was a bia grua, it's enough to eat truma. So Rav says, here it is. That's what I said. And Shmuel is stuck now. How Shmuel go learn the brisa? Shmuel holds that if there's a brisa, Meisvei, it started Meisvei. So Bas Yisrael, that was a pikachas, and he was a pikeach, that erison. But then before then, he became a cheresh. She can't eat truma. But if he died, the husband died, and she fell to a yavam, who's also a cheresh, now she could eat truma, and this makes the yavam even stronger than the husband. Bishlam, that's the end of the brisa. Bishlam Rav Nicha, Rav says everything's very good. That's what it says, that it be a psula is enough to give truma. To get truma from the husband. Elo Shmuel Kasha, Shmuel that she would not be truma. So Shmuel's going to edit the brisa. Amalach Shmuel, Ema, edit, say like this. Means we stick in something, you have to insert something into the brisa, something is missing. That's the beginning. The beginning of the brisa reached that did the and he didn't have a chance to do the sunnah. That's the same. Now insert these words. Let's insert it. Kanas kach nischaresh ochelas. He's stuck in these four words. So what did he do? He made a sunnah over here. He said that the first husband was only eris and she can't eat. But if he became married, he did Nisuin, and then he became a Chevish, then she could eat. That's Pashut. That she's fully in. Yeah, that was the first husband. There was Erison, the Suin, everything's going well, and the marriage she could eat Truma, and then she became a Chevish. That's okay, but she could eat Truma still because she got into the marriage fully. So that's Pashut. But now the rest of the Brisa is going on this case. Meis, and now if the husband dies, this is what he said, I'm Moda, that if there was Nisuin, if the first marriage was Nisuin, Shmuel says I'm Moda. Then she could, right, she can continue. Right, so Shmuel says, I'll fix up the Brisa, that's what I said. That I said, if there's Erison, not, but if there's Nisuin, yes. So I'll stick in Nisuin, there was a Nisuin over here, and now that the husband died, Meis, because she was already eating. So Shmuel says, I said to me, addition, what's the word? Amendation can fix everything up. Stick it in the soon over there, I'm over. But the question is, well, let's take off these words over here.
Is he allowed to do that?
I guess that a Brisa is not like a Mishnah. A Brisa means that sometimes it wasn't as authorized as a Mishnah. So the Gemara continues, but the question is, it says in the end of the Brisa, it ends off that Yavam so it sounded like Rav that the husband wasn't able to give truma, and now the Yavam is able to give truma.
Part of the Brisa.
It's part of the Brisa, and according to Shmuel, he fixed the Brisa that says that there's already in the Suin, so the husband also was giving truma. So that's not that the Yavam did more than the husband also gave truma. So the Gemara has to explain that. Well, my B'zu, what does it mean that in this case the Yavam is better than the husband? The ilu baal chevesh make kara lo achelas, the Yavam chevesh make kara achla. The words don't mean to say that in this particular case the Yavam did better than the husband. No, the husband also gave truma already. The husband also married her completely, and therefore there's a truma, and the Yavam is just going to continue what the Baal had already done. But the words mean that a husband, a Yavam, that a husband who's a chevesh was not able to give his wife truma, but a Yavam who's a chevesh could give his wife truma as long as there was already nesuin already. Means it's not saying that these two brothers that the Yavam did more than the husband did, because Shmuel says no, you have to stick in that there was a nesuin, and the first brother also gave truma. But the Bryce is just saying that here you see the korach that a Yavam can do more than a husband could do. Means the husband would be a chevesh, would not be able to give truma to his wife.
Or the Yavam could.
But the Yavam could, as long provided that the first husband had already started it. So here, small amendation, and everything's good. This was the first Ikad Amri, that everybody agrees if there was nesuin, the Bia Grua is enough to give Truma, and the Machloka says by Erison that Rav holds that's also good enough, and Shmuel says no, it just makes it equal to the first husband, doesn't make it more than the first husband. Ikad Amri, other version of Machloka's Rav and Shmuel, it's going to be more chomer. Rav also agrees. According to the second version, Rav in the second version is like Shmuel in the first version. That Erison also is not. So in the first version, we said that was everybody agreed. In the first version, we said everybody, even Shmuel agreed. Now we're going to say no. It's going to go up one. More chomer. Keep given on the suin. Person for sure not. Even Rav Holmeikara, the one who says this side now, that since she started eating from the suin already, so now the beer grew is enough to make her continue. And Shmuel says even that's not enough.
Wait, are we talking about a shotep?
We're talking about beer grew. We're talking about shogeg, ones, and it's going to be the same. It's going to be equal to a cheresh. That's going to be an application. The Mishnah will talk about that. Right. Beer grew of a yavam. How much does the beer grew of a yavam accomplish? Surely she's supposed to from yivam. Surely not. So there was the suin from the first marriage.
So she's eating truma.
She was eating truma, and now the husband died, and now she can't eat truma. Now there's a beer grew of the yavam. Okay. So Rav says that's good enough because she was eating already. If she wasn't eating, it's only also would say according to this now. Yeah. But since it was doing, Rav says she could continue, and Shmuel says even that now.
Which was like Shmuel in the
right, which was like Shmuel in the first version. Yeah, okay. And now Shmuel goes more up a notch. Yeah. That even if there was nesuin, also she cannot. Ki Rabbi Rachmana Bia Shogi can make it the Pasha. That the pasuk only says that the Bia Shogi, which means the Bia which was not with Das, is good, is only for what it's talking about, Yerusha, and that she's part from Yibum, but not for other things, not for Truma at all. So it goes down. So just to point out the three options we have, that either it even makes the Bia Grua makes even better than the husband. That was the first lesson, that even from Erison, there was a thought that somehow rather than the first lesson held, they can even make it better than the husband. Shmuel said it can't make it better, but it could be equal. Now the third part not even as good as the. So now,
what is Shmuel's reasoning with that?
Because there's no source to say that a Bia Grua makes a marriage, only as far as this, only as far as Yerusha and Yivam is Kona, but not for eating Truma.
He's just.
Yeah, you're saying that's what it says. We're learning the Gemara as if this whole issue about a Rusa cannot eat Truma and a Nesua could eat Truma sounds like it's the Raisa. Sounds like it's that's the way it is. But taking it as a given. The same thing that Shmuel said in the first version. Shmuel, he said this quotation, it says that if the husband gives, which the more thought it meant that the husband started giving, he was Nisuin, she gave it to eat, so the husband could continue. And grew up Psula. Ema, that doesn't mean that. It means we're not talking about that there was a husband started giving to eat already, that they had a marriage that she could eat truma. It means the type of beer that the husband would be able to give her to eat truma, which means that there's a full beer, not a beer psula. So then the yavam also with that type of beer could give her to eat. But if it's a kind of a beer that the first husband would not have been able to give her to eat truma, so then the yavam is not any better. And even if the husband already gave her, don't be the words of Shmuel. That means that once the husband started giving a truma, then the psula is enough. The yavam doesn't mean to say that. That's a full-fledged beer, and if it's a beer that would be a beer grew, so then even if she was eating truma from the first husband, it's not good enough. So we explained Shmuel's words that he doesn't contradict himself. And now we have the same concept as we had before. The Brisa talks about this cherish, which we're going to say that the cherish is the same level as the bia psula, bia grua. And here, it's not going to even help to amend it anymore. Before, the Brisa really says that there was only a case of erusin. And Shmuel amended it in the first to say that it's talking about the suin. But now, according to this version, Shmuel says even the suin is not enough. So we're not going to have an answer for Shmuel. Meisvei, same kasha as before. Basis shval pikachash in the sarsa lekohen pikeach. V'lo speak lekon sarch in his charish. Eino chelas. They had a successful erusin. She was well. He was well. They had an erusin. He was a kohen. But he wasn't able to eat truma yet. Only erusin. And then before the nesuin, he became a cherish. So she can't eat truma. That's just a word for word. Before, so now she could eat. Here it seems to say erusin alone. This is all the same quotation as the price we had before. And here it seems to say, if you face value, it says that even erusin, it's the same price. This is the Ikadamri, same price. And yes.
How can the second Yibam, the second brother, take her as a Yibam when he's a Chayr? She doesn't know what he's doing.
She felt,
but there's a conscious acceptance, a mimer, or something.
The truth is, I don't know the answer. It's later on. There's a lot of detail about it. I don't know. There is Yibum to a Cherish also.
Well, here we're saying it's a bia.
It's a bia group, but there is a Yibum of a Cherish also. Chaim David is saying that there's no Yibum at all. If there's a Cherish, how to do Yibum at all? So we have to wait for later on. Here it seems to say that there is. That the Zika is there already. There's a bit of a marriage, but you're right. That does deserve attention. But that's the case over here. And the Gemara looks at the Yavam Cherish as a bia psula, bia grua. And the words that it says here start off saying that even the erusin is, even if the first one was erusin, now that she falls to the yavam, this bia grua is enough to make her eat truma. So it's spread everybody because everybody said according to this lashon, erusin is not enough. So Rav won't have a problem. Rav will be able to do the amendment that Shmuel did in the first lashon. Bishlam the Rav the Torah's make Torah. Rav will do what Shmuel said before. That he'll say that sticking 4 words that it means after Nesuin. If there was erusin, eat truma, but then Nesuin for the first husband before he became a cherish, then she could eat truma. Now, if the second thing, but Shmuel kasha, because Shmuel holds even if there was Nesuin, the second the Yevamos psula is not enough. And Bryce says yes, kasha, no test for that. So we can't explain Shmuel in the second version, and the halacha seems to be like Rav in the second version or Shmuel in the first version that from erusin there would not be the Yevamos psula would not be enough to give truma, and if there was Nesuin and she started eating already. Then the husband died, she cannot eat truma. But then when they have a bia psula together with yavam, then she would be able to eat truma. If that's good,
yeah, you're saying
that's how we're going to pass him. That's the halacha. Yeah. Now we'll open up a little bit window on the Bryce we learned before.
Kasha. What does it mean? We have to throw out that ikadam?
No, or Shmuel is wrong.
Or Shmuel
Rabbanan. So this is the Bryce we just learned, but it's going to have more information. Marriage, everybody was fine. The kala, the chassan, everybody was fine. They had erusin, and he's a kohen, but she wasn't able to eat truma yet. But that's what we learned till now. that he became a chevish. So then, even though they get married, they go through it. They consummate the marriage. They stay married, but she can't eat truma because it was not a real nisuin. It's not enough of a nisuin. How about she had a son? No, no, ben. So the halacha is that we said that if the Kohen marries a Bas Yisrael, she's allowed to eat truma. If he dies, she cannot eat truma anymore because she doesn't have a husband who's a Kohen. But
but she
if they
can-
have a
if she has a
son,
son that's
she has a
still
son, then
alive,
she
she
couldn't.
can.
Then she couldn't eat.
So
truma.
here we assuming the son is Pikeach,
Ye-
but we don't know. It just says
I don't know.
Ben,
I don't know. So I'll say I don't know.
What's
But you-
Pekach mean here?
Pikech means a smart man, a smart person, not a
but He has
chevish.
his wits about it.
Oh.
No, love vein. She had a son. How did she have a son? Because they consummated the marriage. They continued, and even though he's a chevish, but he had a son, and now the son is a kohen. So the mother's allowed to eat because of the
Because
son.
of the son, not because of the husband.
Right, even though the husband is not enough to give her
That seems
because
so
that,
special.
but
Or
even
to
though,
me, I don't know.
okay, maybe it's partial, maybe it's not, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So no, the lavein ochelas, then she could eat. What if the son dies?
Oh, and she was already eating. It's like the other case.
Mesa ben,
Yeah,
if no, no, what do you
She
say?
has
What do
an
you say?
upgrade, she has
I
a
would say
permanent
just like the
upgrade.
husband and then the yivam, with the yivam chayrish, she could eat the truma. So here, if the Ben died and she was eating truma, now she goes back to her husband.
Where did we say that,
The cherish,
what did we say before?
the
That-
nifers.
Oh, but then we said that, the
We
Bia
said that
Psula,
the
the Bia
husband
Psula,
was a cherish. No, the husband was a pikeach,
yes,
and the yavam was a cherish. Am I saying it right?
you can say
He was
they had a
pikeach.
full
She was eating
marriage
truma, and then she fell to someone who was a cherish. She could eat the truma.
because of the Bia Psula. That have kind of a Bia. They have to have, just the fact that there's a kuka is not enough, it has to have that Bia Psula was enough. That was what we said, that
Okay.
after the Sula there's enough. So
So
how does
now
that
with the
apply to
son,
us?
she's eating truma.
Yes.
And it goes back to the husband who's still alive. And
What does it go back to the husband for? Which husband alive? No
Her
alive husband.
husband.
Yeah, but
The son
the
died.
marriage that they would to the Chevish is
The
not
son
enough of a
died.
marriage to make that she should be able to eat truma.
once she got the Ben, she got to eat truma. Now she's in she has the status of eating truma, and she goes back to the cherish.
What is
of her
that?
husband.
What that I don't get. That I don't get. She goes back to the Chevish. It doesn't make them more
She's
married.
married to us, Cohen,
Yes, but that wasn't not enough. The fact that she's married, the Cohen said a
but
second
she
ago,
was already
that
eating
wasn't.
truma because of her son. So now that
Yes.
she's eating truma, she gets to keep eating truma, just like
No,
the
that had to do with Yibum.
You're
See,
with me, right?
but that had to do with the fact that the second she goes to, because now she's married to the Yavam. She's a new marriage to the Yavam.
What?
That what's the case you're talking about is that the first husband had a full marriage, and she's eating truma, and then he
Right, then he
died,
died.
and then she's marrying the Yavam.
Right.
And even though it was a Bia Brua, but then she married the Yavam.
Yavam
So
is the chevish.
yes, but she
Her
married
son
him,
is like a full marriage. Her son
This-
is a
yeah, so-
full son, and she gets
okay.
to eat truma.
and then he dies.
And then he dies, and then he dies.
So why should she able to eat truma still?
She's
Because she is married, she has a Bia Guru or whatever it's called. to
But
her
that,
husband.
yeah, but that's not making her
she's been up.
She's
married.
still
There's a
related
marriage to the
a
Yavam.
Cohen.
She has
And
a
it was-
valid upgrading though.
The Gemara's not going to say that. I'm not. The Gemara's not going to go there.
She was
But
upgraded,
What's the upgrade is
upgraded to kahuna.
Yes, but as long as she has the son, then the
I
son dies.
understand, but
Well,
once
the
she's
Mount Omer is
there.
gonna say that if she can.
But not because of that reason. The Gemara's
Not
going to
because
get
of that
stuck on. it. The
reason.
Gemara's
Seems
going
to
to
me
get
that
stuck.
the
That's what I
Cherish
like,
husband.
you said.
What? The what?
Cherish husband seems to have,
No, he didn't get upgraded.
he didn't get upgraded, but because she was upgraded by the
By the
son.
son.
because of
Yes.
the Pikeach,
Yes,
So she's now on the.
she's a
been
Kiri Truma because of
upgraded
him.
to Truma.
Yes, but then the son
Then the
died.
son died.
I understand, but she's still in the family of the husband.
We're all on the same
Okay,
wavelength.
Okay,
We're all
I'm not getting
Something
it.
like
Okay.
that.
We're all
Okay.
wrong.
Now, Mesa Ben, what if the son died? Rav Nachlokis. Rav Nassan Omer Ocheles, V'chacham Omer Ein Ocheles. Machlokis. If she could eat even after the son died.
Yeah.
And the Gemara jumps up. My time with Rabbi Nassan. Why should she be able to eat after the husband died, after the son dies?
He's got 3 people here that tell him why. We know for sure.
I'm a rabbi. Hold Shekvar Achla because she ate already. So far, it sounds like.
Sounds like
Okay, everybody's happy.
Who said that?
What about Bas Yisrael? They married a Kohen,
And he died.
and she's eating truma,
Yeah.
and then he died. Could she eat truma because she once upon a time ate? Only as long as the husband is alive.
Yeah, but her husband's still alive. How can?
But the husband wasn't enough to give her truma. He doesn't see that the husband's giving her truma. The son is giving her truma. The husband's marriage is not enough to give her truma.
In other words, when the Cohen died, she
It's over.
fell
She
off.
loses it.
So when the son died, it's over.
That's what that's what it says. In the case before, it's talking about that there was a yibum. The stuff I was asking, where's Rav Nassan make sense? Once the husband died, the case of the husband, So then the kedusha, she's not anymore the Eishes Kohen. Hachanami chivin the meislei poka kedusha semilasa. So to the son, if the son died, she should lose the opportunity to learn. She's not the mother of a Kohen anymore. Ella, the Gemara is going to say a bomb teretz. Omer of Yosef, because of Nasan is sui cherish makilim betruma. The reason why she's allowed to eat truma is not because of the son. It's very misleading. The reason why she's allowed to eat truma is because she was married to the cherish, and that's enough reason. The cherish could give her to eat truma. We didn't think so. It says before in
No,
cherish.
it said he couldn't-
It says
she
it can- it
couldn't
says-
eat until
says
she had a
not.
son.
And now we're going to say a big chiddush that the Nus knows that she could. Means sticking over here as if it would say, Rav Nosson argues and says that.
So according to Rav Nosson, that's not the son.
Right,
Even if it wasn't
right,
his son.
right.
No, he says, "Oh, chelas
And
before
it's not fair. It doesn't say that. It says no. That's the Morris Kasha. He says, "Nesue cheresh machilim betruma." Let's just skip a couple of words just to make it easier.
What
We'll
about
come
our-
back to those words in a
our Sforah
second.
Seems so logical
Which one?
that once she's put into the status of eating truma, now that she's married to a cherish and that the son died,
She's still.
The
Well,
status-
why does the marriage of the cherish help him? It doesn't get upgraded. The marriage of the cherish is not a good enough of a marriage to
well, how
give
come
it to.
the yavam
Because
cherish-
the Yibum is Yibum. There's a Zika over there. She's attached to the Yavam, and
but it's only a cherish. So
But
to
that's-
her husband's only a cherish.
but that's what we talked about.
Maybe
That
at
there's
that
maybe
point-
more to the Yavam than it was to the first husband. The first husband's cherish wouldn't
The
be able to
first
give it
husband
truma,
was a
and the
big-
Yavam is able to. So the first husband doesn't change now because they had a son. Whatever reason the Yavam there's a Zika over there. The pasuk says that the Psula is enough to make considered a
see.
Yibum. So if the pasuk says that it's considered a Yibum, so Lagabi Yibum also Lagabi eating truma. But here it doesn't say anything about the first husband's Bia Psula. His Bia
I
without
see, you're
das.
saying that the marriage to a Bikeach is a strong connection to eating the truma.
And even for once you have that, then the Yavam's Bia
And once
Psula
you
is
have
enough
it,
to make the
then,
consider
but
Yibum,
if it's
also for the
only
truma.
when
But you
it's
don't
the
see that
son
by the
and it
first
goes
husband.
off,
Right,
then
doesn't
you
make
can't
that. The husband.
then you can go
So that's the most kasha that doesn't make sense. And the only way the market figure out is that it's nothing to do with the son. It's alone. He would say she could eat.
He's actually saying that even if it wasn't a son.
Right. Why talk about the son? It's not true. He holds that the answer is Mishum Rabbanan. Let's say according to Rabbanan, the soon is not enough to make her eat. So if you had a son, that's what I argued right here. So he should have argued right away. Right away, he should have said that she should have said Ochel. So he let them talk. You let them finish talking, and then he finished. Then he argued. But the Moshe says it's not true. If you wanted to let them finish talking, then it should have said the Chachamim first. If it would have said that she married the husband, that he became a cheresh before they were able to do Eino Chelas. And if there was a son, she could eat. And then if the son died, she cannot eat. It should have said, if the Chachamim are speaking, the Nosson should have not have intervened in these words over here because he's letting the Rabbanan speak. He would have argued a long time ago. He just waited. So you see that he didn't finish speaking. He argued right here. That means that that he would not
That he
have
agreed
argued
with
agreed
them.
before.
Uh-huh.
So the Gemara says kasha. That's a kasha. But kasha is not the kasha that knocks it off because no other choice. The Gemara says if Nosson has to have argued on the ratio also. It's a little not meduyak in the brisa,
Uh-huh.
but it's not because of the son. It's because of the first marriage is enough appointment.
Okay.
And that's the end of the Gemara. Just to point out, I skipped a couple of words. So I went through the Gemara easy that Arusa cannot give the coins that made the heiress. It's not enough to feed the wife. Nisuin is enough. I didn't explain anything. That's the way it is. Kacha, that sounds like it's the right. So the Gemara sounded like it's very simple. But these words give away a big issue of the whole. I'll just say what it too much time. I don't know too much. Why does the Kohen Truma? Yesterday's parsha doesn't say. Yeah, who says that a Kohen's wife is allowed to eat Truma? A Kohen can eat Truma, and the sons that Kohen and they can eat Truma. But who says that the wife of a Kohen, even if she's a Bas Yisrael, the Kohen married her? Is that any place where it says she can eat Truma? So,
She becomes his property or something.
oh, very nice. The only reason she could eat is because it's called Miknas Kaspa. The same reason that his slaves could eat. Same reason. So Miknas Kaspa, right? Because for the same reason, because Miknas, the same way that so it's only because of that. And if so, when does she become Miknas Kaspa? At what stage of the marriage does she become Miknas Kaspa? Does she become
Apparently soon.
from the
Here's-
From the Erison.
From the heiress?
That's when he gives
But she
her.
can't eat truma?
So why can't she eat truma? She should be able to eat truma. So the Gemara says that with the rice she could eat truma from Erison. This whole thing is not with the rice from Erison she could eat truma. So why?
Rav Nassan is whole.
No, Erison, not never Nassim.
Well, the
Erison,
rabbis are worried because she's in her
Erison. From
father's
Erison she could eat
house.
truma.
The
Oh, very
rabbis are
nice,
worried 'cause the-
very nice. You know everything. That the rice she could eat truma from Erison. Why did the Rabbanan say she should not eat? Because Erison she's still by his father's house. The chassan is going to come and bring her some truma. My betrothed, right? They're Israeli. So that's a chash
Or
that
she
the
will-
Rabbanan
or it'll
didn't.
be there and they won't realize it's true.
That is hers, right? That's the Rabbanan reason why cannot eat. And he says the logos read on the Nesui Cheresh to Kedusha Cheresh. Now, really, there's no reason why Cheresh Nesuin. We spoke about that. Nesui Cheresh is not such a good Nesuin. The whole issue is because she shouldn't be home. Really, she can get truma from an Arusa. They're not in the Nesuin. The only reason Nesuin is that when she's Varusa, so she's in her father's house and all the piece of the present that the husband brought. But when she goes to her own home and she's in a sewer, even though the sewer is a favorite difference, she's not by her family anymore. And when she eats truma, she's not going to give it to her brothers and sisters. So there's no real difference of Nesui Cheresh. No reason why Nesui Cheresh should be downgraded as far as truma. Here the Gemara gives it away that according to Rabbanan they made a gzera. Nesui Cheresh or to Kedusha Cheresh. That if you're going to think that Nesui Cheresh accomplishes Shikiri truma, so then people will think that Kedusha Cheresh also does, and they won't realize the difference. A Kedusha Cheresh is not a Kedushin. If a Cheresh gives Kedushin, it's not a marriage at all. If a Cheresh because there's no chance to give it to her husband, to her brother and sister.
What's in the Nesui Cheresh and Kedusha Cheresh?
Kedusha Cheresh is the that the
heir.
the Nesuni was a cheresh, so even if he has no das, it doesn't. We don't really care because there's no chance she's going to give the truma to her brothers and sisters. She's not home anymore. She's not at her father's home. She's by her husband's home. She's by her husband's home. Even though it's a cheresh, what's the difference? You don't need a halos. You just need she should be out of her parents' house. She shouldn't be. So technically, there's no real problem of the Nesui cheresh, but there's a gzera. Nesui cheresh accomplishes. We'll think that kedusha also accomplishes to make it, and really it doesn't, because you're not about das to do kedushin. So that's a side point that the Rabbanan say that we're not going to allow Nesui Cheresh, and the Rabbanan doesn't care. He says that Nesui Cheresh is also enough to give her to eat truma, and that's why Yag is on the Resha, and not only because of the son, even without the son, he says Nesui Cheresh is enough reason why she could eat truma. So that's good. So the to eat the Rabban Shmuel, according to the first lashon, Erison for sure, Nesuin Machlokis. According to the second lashon, Erison not Nesuin Machlokis. I'm not sure if I said it right just now. And we're asking that Erison not Nesuin yes. Okay. That says in the Mishnah that also other after yevamos speaks about all kinds of arayos, psulim and l'chayvei lavin, and it says also that. It seems to say, if we go back to the Mishnah a second, here it's important to see the Mishnah. So we'll scroll back to the beginning of the parak. Abal Yevinto. Here it is. Abal Yevinto. So it said two parts of the Mishnah. First it spoke about a Yevama, Abal Yevinto, Shogig, Mezid, Onus, all that. And then it said Moara and Gomer, right? Even if it will be a beginning of a penetration, Kana. And there's no difference between Bia and Labia. Period. That's where the Mishnah really finished. And then it says, V'chein, let's highlight that. V'chein, Ava, Alachas, Mikol, Arroya, Sivatorah. The same thing applies before that we said in the Resha, also applies to all these kind of psulim, also pasla, that it makes her a pasal, so l'chari, you read the V'chein. V'chein means whatever we said before applies here also. Before we spoke about a shogeg, mezid, onus, ma'ora, all that. And now l'chari says that also by a psula, that the husband, the man that had relations with the woman, and he was a puzzle, like Amal Kohen Gadol, Chayvei Lavin over here. So also it makes her puzzle. Pasla. That's the Mishnah. So we see that now. We'll scroll back to the Gemara that we're up to now. Bottom line. Amar Rav Amram, Hamil Samalan of Sheshes, Vanherinu, The following thing of Sheshes told us, and he illuminated our eyes from the Mishnah. Means he says something and he proves it from the Mishnah. What is the Mishnah? He's the din. What is the din? The din is the following. So we know that the regular din, everybody knows that Eshes Yisrael, the wife of Yisrael that was raped against her will, is mutter to her husband. If it was with consent, then she's also to her husband. If it was rape, then she was mutter to her husband. But the wife of a but if a Kohen, she's us. That's like the given over here, that a Kohen's wife who was raped is also to stay married to him. How about if she was married to a Yisrael and she was raped, and then the husband died? Is she allowed to marry a Kohen? So that's what Rav Shesha said. That Eshes Yisrael, so even though at the time of the owner she was not a Eshes Kohen, she was Eshes Yisrael, but it makes her possible to kuna even in the future. And it's going to be a proof from the Mishnah. He illuminated, he proved it from the Mishnah. Which Mishnah? Our Mishnah. The Tana Tuna. Rashi says Tuna means our Mishnah. Our Tana is called Tuna. Our Mishnah. Our Tana. So we have a proof from our Mishnah because it says V'chein. This Mishnah we just read. We just highlighted it. V'chein abo lachas mikol ha'reisha mus b'torah or psulos. And what does V'chein mean? My V'chein. That whatever we said in the beginning by Yavam and Yavam also applies to the case of, and over there, what did it say over there? My love, Loshna b'shogig, Loshna b'meziv, Loshna b'onis, Loshna b'rosan. Everything is said at the beginning of the Mishnah also applies that a woman becomes puzzle if she had relations. And over there it says also an onus. It says in one of the cases an onus. So it says that if a woman had relations with a puzzle, the onus, also she becomes puzzle to kahuna. So that means that even if it was it doesn't say Dafka Eshes Kohen, even if it was any kind of like a mamzer to a Yisraelis, anything, any case of a Chayv Yelav, and even if it was Ba'onis, Eshes Yisrael is also going to be us, even as onus. Whatever it was, if it was an onus, it makes a puzzle to kuna. So the Gemara thinks that this is a proof to Rav Sheshes. This is the way Rav Sheshes illuminated this halacha. He got it from the Mishnah that even if she's a Yisrael at the time, Eshes Yisrael, she becomes puzzle to kuna because the Mishnah said even the onus. But the Gemara says it's not a proof. Lo, it doesn't necessarily say that. My v'chein aharo. The Mishnah said a few things. The Mishnah said shogeg onus ratzon. That was the beginning. Then it spoke about echad amor v'echad agomer. That even the beginning of a penetration is enough to be considered a yibum. And then it also said v'lo chilik ben bia lebia, which we didn't explain, but we'll explain it now. Moshe said it at the time that it means even shalom kedarka. So if we take that shot of Moshe, so then which the Gemara is going to say. So there's three things. The Mishnah said three things. I'll try to scroll back again just to see it inside. Here's the Mishnah, and it said three things. It said first about Shogig Mezid Onis Ratzon. Then it said also about Ma'or and Gomer. And then it also said about Lochilak and Bia, which we're going to say mean to be a pinko. Okay. Whatever. One is even the beginning of a penetration is enough to be called a Yavam. And then can be a Labia, which we're going to say that the Gemara is going to say is even though it's a Lokadarka. Even if it wasn't a regular Bia, it's still cohabitation. That's also enough to be Yavam. Now that I was talking about, what is it talking about? If it's going to be going back in the beginning, v'chein. This word v'chein over here, that it says v'chein. So if it's talking about the first halacha, then you see that it's even by onus. That's where you write to Sheshes. But they can say maybe it's on Hama'ara, maybe it's going back on Ben. That's going to be the Gemara's discussion. If Eshes Yisrael Shenensa is also to the Kohen. But if it's going in any one of the other ones, then it won't be approved. And that's what the Gemara is going to say. That it's possible to say that it's not approved. Where are we holding? Yeah. So the Gemara says no, it's not approved. My v'chein hara. It's going on the second end of the Mishnah that hara is enough by yibum. It's also enough to be make her puzzle by a shenensa and so Isha that had puzzle, even if it only was the beginning of a penetration, is not to make a puzzle. But the must have sense. I wrote the man. The name of the rice. The name of the rice. Yafinim yavama. Adrabba. Yavam yafinim rice. Tika rabba rice ksiv. That wouldn't make sense. Mishnah says by yibum, and also too by a rice and it's not true because if we look back at the real audio harana, it says it by Chai V'Lavin, the audience, and the drush to know Yibum was only with the drusha, because there's Shava, Bia, but it wasn't that the Yibum is the source. And then you learn out the contrary. The Arais was the source, and you learned out the Yibum, so V'chein wouldn't make, so you can't say that V'chein is going back on that.
The demand here doesn't mean a person, it means the.
Which Avera, which case,
one?
which kind of Hara?
case?
Back on the
Of
case of
Mishnah.
Araya, that means that Arayas learned from Yevama. No, on the contrary, we learn from Arayas because they could from it says by Arayas. Elamai v'chein ashalo kedaka. That is saying that v'chein, that if that there was erba, that they had erba, or also it's going to make her puzzle. And that you learned out from Yibam. That's also not true. Adrabah. You don't have to learn out the Allah of Shloka Darka by Arayas from Yibam. It's true by Yibam also. So it says a pasuk, we know Kacha, even Shloka Darka, but you don't have to learn out Arayas from Yibam. Yibam by Arayas it says its own pasuk. Mishkavei Isha means Mishkavei is plural, two kinds of Mishkavos. Kedarka, Shloka Darka. So that also wouldn't make sense to say. But the Gemara still ends off that there's not necessary. It's not necessarily proof to Rav Shesh's din of onus. It could be Rav Shesh's is wrong, and onus wouldn't make you to the Kohen. But the Mishnahs are saying the V'chein Kedarka of Chai Lavin from Yibum. That the Gemara is happy to say that you learn it out with Bia. There's going to be exertion there, and we learn out. I'm also stuck over here because I just remember that Chai Lavin Shloka Darka. There was no Gemara about that. So he was saying that you learn out that also Shlokadak would be usher, would be the Shlokadak also would be the lav, and so there's no proof anymore.
So was raped, Shloka that she could marry Kohen. That's what I'm saying.
It doesn't say Beferish. It doesn't talk about. It doesn't say Beferish over here because it doesn't talk about Shaloka Darka of Chai V'Lavin Dekuna. It does say that Chai V'Lavin, in general, you're right. Before we did have a distinction between Chai V'Lavin and Chai V'Lavin Dekuna as far as Aror go. But if they don't say that distinction, then you're right. The same way it says here, Chai V'Lavin makes a puzzle. You're right. That's what it seems to say. The mission is going on puzzle, and it says, no, it does Shaloka Darka. You're right. It does say that. It says by makes a puzzle to a coin also. You're right. So it does make it to a coin. So. But the Gemara does end off that there's no proof to Rav Sheshes. Means this, but the Gemara said he illuminated our eyes, and the Gemara and they have no proof to it. That's true. Shenensa, she is also to a coin from now on. But you have no proof in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says v'chein. It's going some of Pshat going everything. But the Gemara is matche. If you're going on there one day about Shlok, you wouldn't see necessarily what's going on the din of. But the din is true. The din is true. Rav Sheshes' din is true that even if she had a husband Yisrael, it does make her to a coin from now on. New din. Intentional doesn't have to mean that. I mean that if she had relations with a person who's puzzle to her, even if it was against her will, that makes her into a zona officially, and that means that the husband, like it says, that it's not for a Kohen to marry a Gusha, Zona, Halala. So if he would continue to have relations with his wife, he'd get Malchus because it's called a Zona. The Gemara says, Mishum Zona in Mishum Tumalo. The Gemara is surprised because we're going to see soon that there's another din where it says, by the din of Machzik Shasa, the pasuk is where it's talking about Machzik Shasa, that says the husband who divorces his wife, and he divorced, died, she can. Then we learned out a dinner, special dinner over there. Another drug. Kohen is not allowed to marry a woman even after she was raped. Means there is such a din, which we know. We know the din to be true. We know it's true. But the Gemara is going to say there's also a law. The Gemara is going to say that for sure it's also for a Kohen to have relations with a woman who had a via psula with anybody, even if it's against her will. But the issue would be a lav abba machal asay, that's only called an asay. And then there's going to be a lav that says by Tumah that it says lo yichal ba'ala rishon, that the husband cannot marry her. It's going on a coin on the drash world, and that's also going to be a lo saseh. And also a zona, if it's called a zona, it's going to be on the second law. That's what the Gemara is going to deal with. Surely it's not that relationship. Surely it's also only called asay, lava b'machal asay, or it's going to be a and the Isra of Tameya, like it says, and in the drash, the woman became a Bia Psula. So that's what the Gemara is first saying that the Gemara says it's not. Rashi says the pasuk of Tumah is coming up. Where's the pasuk here? That it says the pasuk is talking about a divorced wife who married somebody else. But in the drash world, it's also talking about Sota, Shenivala, and called Tame, means if the woman had relations, even if it was going to be against will, it would be Tame, it would be us to the Kohen. So the Gemara says, like, without even proving it, that are you saying that it's not going to be us for the din of a Tumah? The Gemara says, but also for a zona also. So the main chiddush was to say she's called a zona, even if it was against the will, she's called a zona. Must have observed. They have a kasha that seems to say that it's only an asay. Not it's also being malchus. It's a female that's still forced. So she's also, that's what the pasuk is saying, that she has seclusion, and if she had relations, but not against her will, she'd be also to her husband. Hanis pasa muteris, a regular woman, it's much that she would have been forced, raped, husband. But there's a drash, there's a drash to say over there, there's some women that even if they would have been raped, also that's to the husband, who's that Aisha's going, but it's only like Allah say, and it's an say, doesn't that get the civil abba? I call how you b'chal zona, kishapret l'cha akosim gabi Aisha's Israel. If you learn this pasuk asura, on this pasuk muteres b'chal Aisha's going to the kaima. It's true that it's saying that lava say, but we forget we're talking about a losa say. The pasuk does say zona, include everybody, but the pasuk says that of a Aisha's Israel Shenansa, that she's not also to her husband, who's married to a Yisrael, and she was raped. She couldn't go back to her husband. But when he said that Aisha's Kohen is not included in that, so that goes to the cloud. So there's a losa say. So as far as the Aisha's Aser, even with a losa say, not only is it not say, it's even a losa. All this was the first lesson that said, according to Rabbah, she's also a Tameh, Tameya, Lo Yichal Ba'allah. That pasuk is going to be losa say of a zone of Lo Yichal Ba'allah Asher Hu Tamah to Lavan. Ikad Amri, Rabbah says she's not a zona. Ikad Amri, Nensa, Ba'al Lo Kala Mishum Tumah, only Tumah, Mishum Tumah, and Mishum Zona Lo. Alma bonus no Karina based on. Those are two Lashonos of Rabbah. If the woman who was raped, does she get the label of a zona? According to the first one, yes. According to the second one, not. And then when I say crash over again, that's not even Tumah. It's an asay. Must have zera. Is it a loss at all? Hilarious. That's talking about a woman who was not raped, so she's also to her husband. Not sure if she was raped, then it would have been with her to her husband. But the Aisha's going is also. That even though she was raped, also she's also to her husband. Which one? Aisha's or Aisha's going, and it's only a lavabama. I'll say so. It should be. And I say, you're not saying it's supposed to say zona. It's the same as before. Everybody would have included. If it wouldn't have said this exception, we would have thought that even Aisha Israel also, even if she was dancer. And she's not included. But that leaves the Aisha's going in the same qual of the Losase. So there is a Losase. Just to sum that up, Aisha Israel. What? It's a drash, so it's a little bit hard to see it because it's not the Pashut Pshat. The Pashut Pshat is talking about a man who divorced his wife, she remarried, and then he cannot marry her again. That's the Pashut Pshat. But the one says a drash, that's called, I don't know. It's called a zone. Right. Over there, after she's been defiled, she wasn't really defiled, she married somebody else. But as far as the first husband, it's called that she's defiled somebody else. But in the drash world, it's going to talk about she was defiled, but there's not allowed to take her anymore. Who's the husband who's not allowed to take a wife who was raped? A Kohen. And the Gemara is saying that it says lo yuchal ba'ala. It says that the husband cannot marry her, so that's going to be a lo saseh. That's not going to be just a lav b'machalase. It's a lo saseh. It's chay malchus. So if the Kohen would take the wife who was raped and stay with her, he's going to be chay malchus. Surely for lo ba'ala, which is a drash, and also maybe it's called a zona. That's the two lashonas in Rav is called a zona. So I don't know the law over here, but either way, it's going to be a lo saseh. I see that the words here is on the letters on the second lashon, which means that it's tumah, maybe not a zona, but surely it's also for the going to marry the wife who was raped. The question is if it's one lo saseh or two lo sases.
Can you explain that? I'm not getting the difference between the tumah and the zona.
There's two lavim. One says yesterday's parsha. I'll say by Cohen that he cannot marry a grusha. I forgot the pasuk exactly. Anybody remember the pasuk that it says that a Cohen cannot marry a grusha? In Emor, right in the beginning. So it's a lo saseh for going to marry his own.
Lo yik-
That's one pasuk. Is there a strict that she goes on or not? Machlok is still shown in verse. Why? Is that called a zona? The halala lo yikoch. A kohen may not marry a zona or a
So
halala.
someone raped.
So is that
That's
called a
not
zona or
right.
not? Two lashonas in Rava. Two lashonas in Rava is called a zona or not. There's another pasuk that talks about the pasuk is talking about marrying a wife who remarried, and that the pasuk shot, and that's awesome. But there's a drash over. There's room for a drash over there that's also saying that a husband himself may not marry a wife who was defiled, even if it was against her will.
Only by
And that's talking about a Kohen, right? And that the Gemara agrees to that. That's a lo saseh for a Kohen to marry to stay with his wife, even if she was bonus. And that's true. That's true. The Gemara had a kasha because
Defiled means tumah. Is that
right, the word tumah means defiled over, right? Doesn't that right? Oh, I should have said that.
I'm trying
Tumah,
to get the
yeah,
difference
100%.
between zona
Tumah
and-
doesn't mean anything about tumas meis, tumas sheretz. No, it means that she was defiled.
It doesn't mean raped, does it?
Over there, the pasuk is talking about even if it was going to be against her will. That's going to be the drash in the drash world. You have to see where the drash comes from. Oh, really? The drash comes. We know where the drash comes from. Here it says by Parshas Bamidbar. Naso. But a sota over there it says that if she was against her will, she could stay with her husband. Only problem is he learned it pasuk that she was not grabbed. She wasn't seized. It wasn't against her will. But there's a mashmos over there that some husbands are going to be yasser even if it was against her will. And who's that? They're Kohen. So now once you take this pasuk that the Kohen is also his wife, even if it was against her will, and you see there's a thing called hutama, that the Kohen should not take a woman who was defiled, and we know that the Kohen is called, the Ashes Kohen is called defiled, at least what I say, at least what I say. So it goes back to the cloud, that's called the losa say, and therefore there would be malchus for lo yichal ba'ala to take back the woman achrei hasher hutama, and two lashon if it's a zone, That's the Gemara. So at the beginning, yes, the first daf, we finished already. The first time it was all about a bia grua of shalom b'das, b'rasa and b'shogeg bonus. If that would be enough to be able to give his yavama that he had such a kind to be a psula with, that was the machlokas Rav and Shmuel, and it comes out that by Erisin we're going to paskin not. But if the first marriage was Nesuin and she was already eating truma, then the bia psula of the yavam would be enough to give her truma. That was the Amud Aleph. The Amud Beis is 2 points. One is that the Ashes Nansa is even though when she was Nansa, she was the wife of Yisrael, she could go back to him, but she cannot marry any more Kohen. And also it talks about that a Kohen is Chayv Malchus for Tumah. And maybe for everybody.
Sorry about-
Thank you. I'll be back in a few minutes with Pirkei Avos.
Guide to the Mishnah.